And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another episode of Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network dedicated to covering Indiana women's basketball. Today is our 139th episode, recorded on the afternoon of Monday, December 23rd, 2024. I'm your host, Kathy Amos, and I'm joined tonight by my co-host, Jeff Marlow. Today, we will be discussing your Indiana Hoosiers wins over Bellarmine, 95-61, and Oakland, 90-55. And both of those wins now bring the record to a 9-3 overall. So as always, though, we'll start our first show like we do every show, and that's with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. Our banner moment today, Jeff, I'm going to go back to the Bellarmine game, actually. In the third quarter is with about 2:08 left to go when Chloe Moore McNeil passed the ball to Hannah Sandvik, who hit a three to go up even more in that game. But what was more important was that was Chloe Moore McNeil's 400th assist in her career. That tied her for 6th at the time, and we'll talk more about her numbers in that area later in the show. But I picked that as our banner moment because 400 assists over her career now, 4.5 years in, is really, I think, a testament to her dedication to her teammate and how she believes in what Coach Moore preaches with sharing the sugar. And Chloe has been one of the better assist players and people distributing the ball that we've seen in the last few years. And that was just a great moment for her in her career. So for me, that was our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And our banner moment is brought to you, as always, by Home Field Apparel, the presenting sponsor of the Back Home Network, which includes the Assembly Call, Crimson Cast, X's and Joe's, and now the Dribble Drive. Home Field is constantly releasing new schools or updating their products for schools in their existing line, so you're bound to find something for you or anyone in your life that loves great collegiate gear. Not only do you get great quality apparel, but you are supporting an Indiana-based business that has its roots in the Kelly School of Business. So go to homefieldapparel.com and use our promo code HOME23 to get 15% off if it's your first order. Again, that promo code is HOME23 for 15% off. The website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right, well, moving on, we'll just hit a couple news headlines before we dive into kind of some overviews of those two games. Both of these are injury related, so one good and one bad. So we'll start with the bad. Lene Beaumont had confirmed knee surgery to repair a torn ligament, and she is now out for the season. Sydney Parrish, though, on the other hand, returned to action in the Oakland game, and I'm sure we'll be talking more about Sydney and her impact to that game as we get into it. So those are our news headlines, but now let me throw it over to you, Jeff. What are your Marlow's musings for today? You're on mute.
Merry Christmas to everybody out there. And hey, Kathy, they did what they had to do. In my opinion, those were a couple games where you really had some opponents. Even though Bellarmine came in with a pretty good record, they really were not the level of quality of league play that Indiana was used to. Bellarmine has struggled ever really since they went to the A-Sun a few years ago, but looks like they're starting to get it turned around in the right direction. But again, stepping up at a Big Ten, playing a Big Ten team. So I thought both games, proved that to be what Indiana really needed. A couple good games, couple blowouts, and they showed that when they move the ball, and things can happen offensively, that they can score. Now, whether they can score that way against a high-quality Big Ten team, we'll find out. But they also were able to keep their turnovers to a relative minimum. And so a lot of good things that came out of that. I'm not going to – the defense, I'm going to throw that up to a little bit maybe quality of opponent. But the offense, I thought, really took some strides in these two games. And that's what I want to see as we go into playing Wisconsin on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with both of those things. So, well, why don't we just go ahead and jump into it? We normally do pivotal plays, but since we're kind of covering two games here at once, maybe we'll just talk about kind of some numbers and our overall themes, Jeff, of what we saw in both of those games. I know there's been some, scheduling things going on for both of us with holidays and travels and things like that. So we might not have been able to write down as many pivotal plays I think I covered probably the most pivotal plays with Chloe getting her 400th assist in that first Bellarmine game. But why don't we talk numbers? So why don't you go first? What is one you started kind of talking about already, but what other ones do you want to talk about in those two games?
In both games, I'll start here. In both games, they had 27 assists, which first game was a season high, and the second game matched that season high. So again, 27 assists in the Bellarmine game on 37 made baskets. And then in the Oakland game, 27 assists on 31 made baskets. So a lot of ball movement, setting people up to score. So that was the first number I'm really going to jump out here.
Yeah, one number I wanted to talk about, just one you already touched on as well, are the turnovers. So in the Bellarmine game, they only had 11 turnovers, and in the Oakland game from yesterday, they only had 14. So I believe their goal as a team is still right around that 12 turnover mark. So they were right at or under or just over in both of those games, and so that was really great to see that. Being able to take care of the ball, because as we saw earlier in the year in a couple of those losses that we weren't expecting against, Harvard and Butler. Was it Harvard game? They had 27 turnovers. So, they didn't even have 27 turnovers in these two games combined. Now, again, I understand, like you're saying, quality of opponent, all that. We won't need to repeat that. I'll show we understand what we're showing. But I think you're absolutely right there with the offense taking steps forward, because we saw the ball moving more. As you mentioned, the assists already really helping each other out there and sharing that sugar, like I mentioned earlier. And then now the turnovers coming back down as well. What other numbers, Jeff, stick out to you from these games?
Just the shooting. I think that goes along with it. They in the Bellarmine game, they shot 56% and they shot 39% from beyond the arc. In the Oakland game, they shot 55% overall and 46% beyond the arc. And again, they got open shots because they were moving the ball. So, and again, for a team that has struggled at times, A, to move the ball, and B, knock down some shots, those were obviously two good things.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple numbers that stick out to me as well. In the Bellarmine game, 7, and in the Oakland game from yesterday are 3. And what are those? Those are number of players that we had in double digits. So we had 7 players in the Bellarmine game that had double digits, including 3 people off the bench, with Caroline Striplin, Hannah Sandvik, and Lexi Bargesser. And then in the Oakland game, we had Shay Chesky, Sydney Parrish, and then Caroline Striplin again coming in off of the bench. All of them had double-digit points. And then you had 2 other players with 8 points knocking on the door there to make it a really close game. So not only do we have multiple players in double digits, but you're seeing a lot more help from the bench. And again, it was nice to be able to get a lot of our bench players in both of these games. Like, for example, we already saw Faith Wiseman coming in yesterday. With about 6 minutes to play. I think this is really important for the future of this program as well, is being able to really get players to have a lot of points and getting our bench time and getting some of those even farther down on the bench. I think we had everybody play in both of those games. So those are some important numbers for me. How about you? What's next on your list?
Well, I'll go with that. And in the Bellarmine game, they had 45 points off the bench, as you mentioned, with Hannah and Caroline really kind of leading the way. And then yesterday in the Oakland game, they had 40 points off the bench. So they got almost half their points off the bench. And for this program, that has not been, that's not a normal. That is not and so if that can continue, I think that you're going to see some good things. And you kind of talked a little bit about Caroline Striplin. I kind of started thinking about this a little bit at the end of the week last week, because everybody's been kind of like, well, we're not getting much out of that. We're not getting much from Lily, and wanting to compare to Mac. And you got to remember, Mac was an All-American level player. She's kind of a generational player in terms of being that 5. But if you look at, for example, yesterday, Caroline Striplin and Lily Meister combined for 24 points. And in the Bellarmine game, they combined for 29 points. So you're getting, that kind of production out of your 5 spot. Now, again, quality of the competition, but if you can get 20 points out of that 5 spot, then they're going to have some good things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's stick with Caroline Striplin here for a little bit. Eagle Eye here in the chat wants to hear about her efficiency. So we already know a few games ago, she put up 27 points on perfect night shooting. So she's been continuing that trend. In the Bellarmine game, she was 7 of 10 for her 18 points. And then yesterday in the Oakland game, she was 7 of 9 for 17. That's minutes for 16 points. So in just those 2 games alone, she has only missed 4 shots and putting up 19 shots and only missing 4 of those. So not only has she been starting to really come in and give us great time off the bench in total, but really great effective offensive production. So, Jeff, but my question for you is, do you think we'll continue to see Caroline Strickland come in off the bench, or do you think there's an argument to be made that maybe she needs to take Lily's spot in that starting lineup?
I think she'll keep coming off the bench. You get some players just get comfortable in a role, and I think also we've seen Terry Morin be comfortable with who she wants to go with. She seems very the ridge is not the word, but she likes her rotations the way she can get them. And we saw this yesterday. Sid was healthy. Sid goes into the lineup, and then Jules, to a large part, becomes that person who comes in for Sydney. And so I think, just something about her, the way her philosophy is, that's where that. But you also look at the one negative I'll come up here, and it's definitely not Strickland because she's still shooting. And for a big player as a female, those are areas where they usually struggle at the line, just sometimes the touch and stuff. But Strickland has been lights out at the line. But this is a team that was shooting pretty well at the free throw line, even in some of their losses and in some of the early games. Now the last couple of games, yesterday against Bellarmine, they were 65%, and yesterday they fell to 68%. So free throw line has to get short up just a tad, but they're leaving some points at the line.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I agree with you on Strickland. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, at least for me, in my opinion, who starts and who doesn't. She's putting in starter minutes as well. She put 18 minutes up on the board for Bellarmine and then another 17 against Oakland. So she, is putting up around those 20 minutes or so. And this was in 2 games that were, again, by the fourth quarter, we had almost only bench players in there. So she was one player I really wanted to touch on. Going back to the Bellarmine game, well, maybe first, before I start talking about individual play, Jeff, was there any other team numbers that you wanted to talk about? If not, maybe we can switch over to some individual play.
Yeah, if we want to, we can go ahead and touch. Might as well lead us into game ball type stuff too, unless you want to hold off on that.
Yeah, there's a few players maybe that we're not doing game ball, but I do want to talk about. So
go ahead.
Valentina Katalikova. I want to talk about her a little bit and what your thoughts are. Again, limited minutes, 6 minutes against Bellarmine. She got a few more, 9 against Oakland. And again, it's limited play, competition, all of that. I have really liked what I saw from her so far, including the 8 points she put up. She looks to have a really good 3-point shot, a good and really good vision on the floor. Like there was a really great pass I thought she made. I can't remember who it was to down low now, but they ended up missing it. So she didn't get the assist yesterday, but I feel like she's got good vision of the floor, and maybe not this year becoming a major rotation player, but I can see in a year or two that she might be somebody to kind of keep her eye on in the future. But what are your thoughts on her play of what you may or may not have saw in the last couple of games?
I think at this point, you hope she becomes Hannah. Where she gets a few minutes here and there, maybe the first couple of years, and now Hannah started to come in and play a much bigger role and being much more productive in that role. We're getting positive minutes and positive numbers out of Hannah rather than just putting up, like 10, 12 minutes. And then she's putting up 1 point, double points, a couple of rebounds. We're getting positive numbers, positive minutes out of Hannah. So that's what you hope for with Valentina. I'm probably not going to talk a ton about her when Hannah awards, but I felt like Jules played well while she was in that stretch. Does she always do the right thing? Does she still have some turnovers that she needs to clean up? Yeah, but what I like about Jules, she'll step in there and she'll take a charge. About once a game, she's going to take a charge from somebody because she's willing to just stand in there and take the hit. So that's, so those were a couple that, that I would talk about. I thought, we're probably not going to talk a ton about her. I thought Lily played well. Even though her numbers were a little bit down in the Oakland game, I thought they were solid numbers. She missed a couple shots early, but I thought really played pretty well in the second half. But again, in these 2 games, you should really be getting a lot of people playing well. I think that's where you felt better. This kind of reminds you of the IU team of the last 3 years. Went out, took care of I hate to say inferior, but not as good opponent.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So touching on those two players for me, I had similar thoughts. I thought Jules, in fact, I wrote down from the Oakland game just a couple of things. I don't have the exact time or whatever, but yeah, she had a really great offensive rebound that led to some second chance points for another player where she had an assist. She took a charge. There was one time she had a great cut underneath the basket where her teammate was able to find her and get her there for two. So that to me, I wrote those kind of things down because that's what we're starting to see from Jules is, again, to your point, she's not, at least this year, not going to put up, spectacular numbers or lead the team in this or that. But, she still was, had 10 points for us against Bellarmine, another 4 points for us yesterday, including a couple of assists and some 6 rebounds in that game. So she's doing a lot of that kind of role player utility type of work that we would expect to see from her. And it's really nice to see that growth from her. Lily, I thought she played okay. I was a little disappointed in her start to that Oakland game. She ended up only shooting 4 of 10 from the field. Like you had mentioned, she missed some shots she probably should have made. That's the one place I would like to see Lily kind of get short up, is to be able to make consistently those shots when the ball is getting to her. The last player for now, until we get into game ball and hustle, I do want to touch on was Chloe Moore McNeil from our Hoosier Proud banner moment again. Chloe didn't put up a whole lot in terms of points for us in these games. 2 points in Bellarmine, 3 points in Oakland. But what she did really bring to the floor, I thought, was good vision. She had 5 assists in the Bellarmine game and then another 8 assists in the Oakland game. So to me, Chloe is doing the kind of Chloe things that we need from her in terms of finding her teammates. And it didn't matter in these games in terms of her productivity. That is something I'm still kind of keeping an eye on, because I think once we now get into the heart of Big Ten play, there are going to be times we need to have her step up and be more aggressive offensively. But those are kind of my thoughts. I thought Chloe overall had great defense as well. But what are your thoughts on Chloe's play?
I'd still like to see her be a little more aggressive offensively against these two teams. It didn't matter as much, but I'm not. I think she has to get more than 5 shots, and then she took 2 yesterday. So yeah, that's not enough shots. But again, you can live with against these two opponents. But on Saturday against Wisconsin, I think we need to get her to 8, 10, 12 shots and have her be a little bit more of the focal point.
Yep. Awesome. Well, let's just jump into the game balls then, Jeff. Let's just do both games maybe at the same time this time. So if you're watching on YouTube live or after the fact, we do have our numbers updated. So Yarden Garzone leads us with 3 game balls. Sydney Parrish, Lily Meister, and Shay Chesky with 2, and Caroline Striplin has 1. So let's start with the game ball for the Bellarmine game, Jeff. Who did you have written down for that?
I had a couple of ways I could have gone here. You could have thought about Yarden Garzone with 16 points and 3 rebounds and 6 assists, but I was going to go. And then I thought you also could have thrown Jules in here a little bit. Jules had 10 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. I mean, and a block. And so Jules, I thought, was somebody to think of a little bit, just because if you were trying to stay away from just thinking about scoring, Jules was providing a lot in different spots. But in this game, I'll go back to, it was Caroline Striplin, 18 points on 7 of 10 shooting. She had 8 rebounds and assists, so, I'm going to go with Caroline Striplin here, just because, again, off the bench in 18 minutes, she basically scored a point a minute.
Yeah, I was down to the same 2 players in that Bellarmine game, Yarden Garzone and Caroline Striplin. So I did end up settling as well on Caroline Striplin, but I want to talk a little bit about Yarden, because I thought she had a nice game, right? 16 points in that game. She had 6 assists as well, which was a team high in assists in that game, and 3 rebounds. She was efficient, 6 of 9, including 3 of 6 from 3-point land in 25 minutes. So I had a hard time with them, but yes, coming in off of the bench, playing 18 minutes, 18 points, 7 of 10 shooting, 8 rebounds and assists, and only two personal fouls. I thought Caroline ended up kind of showing us as well why we ended up wanting to get her out of the transfer portal. So we will give our game ball then for Bellarmine to Caroline Striplin. But how about for the Oakland game? Who do you have in that one, Jeff?
Well, I thought Caroline Striplin was in the discussion here. It was 16 points, 5 rebounds, a block and a steal, but she did have 3 turnovers from that standpoint. You also could have looked at Sydney Parrish, Sid coming back off the injury list and getting right back into the lineup, 11 points, 7 rebounds. She had an assist, a block, 2 steals. But for me, I really felt like the game really kind of went with how this young woman played, and that was Shea Chesky. Shea was 20 points overall. She had 3 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal in 29 minutes. She was 7 of 11 from the field, 4 of 7 from beyond the arc. And so I went with Shea Chesky here for the game ball.
Yeah, that I'm going to make it unanimous again on that one too. I wrote down Shea Chesky in here as well. I thought she did a lot of good things on both sides of the ball in that game yesterday. As you mentioned, it was, again, you could talk, like you mentioned, Caroline Strickland again. But the thing, what I'm really liking, I'm seeing from Chesky, I think, is a big part is her lack of turnovers, or reduced turnovers. She only had 1 in the game here against Oakland, which again, competition, all of that I get, but Shea is starting to hopefully show some signs of why we were getting her in the transfers portal as well. Although interestingly, and that includes, 4 of 7 from 3-point land. So make both her free throws. So I like Shea Chesky in that one as well. So we will give our game ball to Shea, and that will give her her second game ball of the year.
Her
third, sorry. Yes.
And then Strickland got her second.
And Strickland second back-to-back. Yes. With
right.
her, so.
I will say this, there's a little discussion here that Ari started that I'm not sure I want to go out on a limb and say Shea or Yarden is the better player or more important, but I think I'm coming to Mike right now. I think this team goes as Shea goes. When Shea struggles, and especially if she's turning it over, this team seems to struggle. Whereas if Shea is taking care of the ball and able to knock down some shots, this team in the last couple of games has really shown that they can play well. But again, I think part of that goes back to moving the ball. And I think they all benefit from that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's move on then to our Grace Berger Hardest Worker Award. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see the ticker at the bottom with our numbers. So Chloe Moore McNeil leads the way with 3, Lily Meister, Yarden Gazone with 2 each, Caroline Strickland, Shea Chesky, and Jules Lamondola with 1. So Jeff, how about we go back again to the Bellarmine game, and who do you have written down for your hardest worker in that game?
Again, I thought about Jules here. I really did. I thought Jules had a good argument for this, but I'm going to go with the other kid, the young woman who we talked a little bit about, came off the bench, career high 13 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 blocks, and that's Hannah Sandvik.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. I wrote her down, I think, part of the way through the third quarter. She just really looked dialed in that game. A career high, first time ever double-double. She added in as well 6 rebounds. I thought she was just doing a lot of the little things, right? Like she hit a 3. I wrote down a few of them as I was going. She hit a 3. She had a defensive block. Then she runs down the court and got a layup. And then she got another 3 right after that. And then another one in the third quarter. She was just really, I thought, dialed in on the game. She ended up 3 of 5 from 3-point land all in the second half, played 25 minutes for us. And she had just a really nice overall game. And I think what we're seeing is good growth out of her as well from the last couple of years as now she becomes a junior. So yes, I will make that unanimous for me too and give that game ball to Hannah Sandvik, which is her first one for the year.
And I think this is an interesting one because Sandvik's somebody who had a little bit of international experience. She had played in, for the Finnish national team at some of the younger age groups. And I think a lot of us kind of wonder, well, just what is this? Because she hadn't really shown anything. And I think we do have to remember that for some of the foreign players coming in, the game is different. The international game gets played a little bit differently. The quality of competition, especially like the U18, U20, and some of the FIBA, especially the Europe stuff, may not be to where we think it will be. But I think we've seen by staying patient with Hannah a little bit that we're starting to see that she can play a very important role off the bench for this team.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think even just this year alone, the 2 people I think have shown the most growth are her and Jules. Of course, Jules benefited from the extra playing time while Sydney was out getting her injury, recovering from her injury. But I think those 2 players in particular have really shown growth. And yes, again, Eagle Eye in the chat has a great quote here. So much fun to see the depth of this team grow each game. The future is promising. I agree with that. I mean, like we were talking about earlier, it was great to see us go all the way down the bench, but I don't even think it's necessarily just the competition that we're playing. I really think that Jules and Henna in particular and Caroline Stripling, all three of them are going to play really big roles for us in conference play. And I think that's going to be important to see how far we can go and into the conference standings here as we get into it. Okay, so we have one more game, Oakland, to do our Graceburger Hardest Worker. I think here too, Jeff, there's probably a number of ways you could go. So where did you end up landing for your Hardest Worker award?
Like I said, I thought maybe you could go with Caroline Stripling here, 16 points, 5 rebounds, as we mentioned already. But I guess probably because I got a soft spot for this kid being an Indiana kid, but coming back from the injury in 19 minutes, Sydney Parrish with 11 points, 7 rebounds, an assist, a turnover, a block, and 2 steals. So for me, the Graceburger Hardest Worker in this game against Oakland was Sydney Parrish.
Yeah, me too, Jeff. I agree with you. There's a couple of different ways, but I almost I was watching the game with my mom actually earlier today. We weren't able to watch it live yesterday, and I said, it's just nice to have Sydney come back because you can see her hustle on the floor, even though she's not as quick with her knee brace and her injury. But she was doing the little things. She has such great position in rebounding, I think, that really helps help her do that. And she ended up with 7 rebounds again today, leading the team in rebounds. And we've seen that from her in the past. And so I think her basketball IQ is there. But I think on top of it, she made 3 3-pointers, which, she had been struggling prior to the injury with her shot. As candidly a lot of the team was for a while. And it was nice to see her kind of get that stroke back. I think they said on the broadcast, she had only hit 4 total in the season before going out with the injury, and she hit 3 in one game. So hopefully this is a sign of getting her going in that area as well. So we will give Sydney her the Graceburger Hardest Worker, and that will be her first one for the year. So, Jeff, with that, we have some numbers. Again, we've been watching. I've already mentioned one, which is Chloe Moore McNeil and her assist number. So I'll just finish that off. So, again, Chloe had 8 assists in the Oakland game and 5 in Bellarmine. She passed the 400 mark. She is now up to a total of 409, and that has put her squarely in the 6th position, and she only needs 2 more to tie for 5th. So I think she'll continue to move up that top 10 assist board in career. Points, the thing we've been watching with Chloe is getting to 1,000. She only had 5 points total in these last 2 games, so she is now at 936. And then Yarden had 16 and then 8 in the 2 games respectively. She's up to 898 points, so she's 102 away from reaching that 1,000 mark. She made 5 3-pointers between the 2 games. So she's made 165 in her career. If she gets 2 more, she'll be tied for 9th. So she's squarely in that 10th position of all time of 3-pointers made, and she's almost to 9th. So those are the numbers we've been kind of watching as we've gone on here. So let's talk about our upcoming game, Jeff. So we have the Badgers that we'll be hosting on December 28th. That game will be at 2:00 Eastern, 1 Central on Big Ten Network. That's not Big Ten Plus this time, but the normal Big Ten. So I'll touch a little bit on Wisconsin as a team, and maybe if you can talk about their players, we can kind of highlight what's going on. So right now, Wisconsin is 10-2 overall and 1-0 in conference play. Their head coach is Marissa Mosley. She is in her 4th season at Wisconsin with a record of 44-50, which is .468 percentage. Prior to that, she spent 3 years at Boston University, where she had a record of 53-5, which is around a 45% record there. In terms of rankings as a team, Wisconsin right now is 83rd in the net. So, Jeff, how about individually? What do you see from Wisconsin we should watch out for?
Yeah, they got 3 double-figure scorers. Sarah Williams, 6'4" junior forward, who's averaging 20 and 12 right now. She's a double-double machine. She's shooting 54% from the field and 3 blocks per game. So Sarah Williams is going to be somebody that Indiana's going to have to really have a game plan for on Saturday. This is a team that does, and we'll get into the team numbers a little bit more here afterwards. But they are not an up and down team. They are going to really be a half court type team. Their tempo level is not very high up in the national ranking. So when you look at it that way, but they seem to be fairly efficient. They also have Carter McCray, 6'1" sophomore center, 11 points, 11.4, 8 rebounds a game, shooting 68% from the field. And then one player that maybe Indiana fans will remember a little bit from last year, Ronnie Porter, who really played well up in Madison. 5'4" junior guard, but she's struggled a little bit. And I think part of it is, I should say, when I say struggle, compared to some of the numbers she was putting up last year, she's averaging 11 points a game, 4 rebounds, 43% shooting, only 30% from deep, and she's averaging about 5 assists per game. But it just seems like her numbers are a little bit down, and I would have thought maybe her assist numbers would be a little bit more elevated than they were, since they're probably pounding the ball inside. But again, a very dangerous player that you don't want to let get hot on Saturday.
Yep. Some other things about the team, I guess her hoops rating is 88th, so pretty close to around the net rating. As you mentioned, their offense, they're right around 70 points per game, which is 95th in the country. On the defensive side, they're giving up 61.4 points per game, which is 116th. As you mentioned, their tempo is not real great. They're 338th in tempo, 7.1 rebounding margin, and a 1.3 turnover margin. So, Jeff, what kind of keys to the game do you think we should keep an eye out watching for the Wisconsin Badgers coming into Assembly Hall?
I think you got to control Williams. You have to absolutely control Williams in the paint. And not let her go get her 20, and even if you hold her to 20, don't let her go get 30. Don't let her have 35. And you got to find a way to win the rebounding battle here, or at least keep it even. And you cannot let Williams dominate, especially on the offensive glass. So that to me is the biggest key of the game. And then obviously, for kind of the cliche, but we can't turn it over. We can't have empty possessions.
Yeah, absolutely. So continuing our trends is what I'd like to see going into this game, right? The trends we've been seeing: lower turnover margins, higher assist numbers. I think we've been rebounding the ball a little bit better as well. It's never been really a strength here the last number of years, but I think as a team, I think we can, hold our own against Wisconsin, and those are kind of the keys I'll be looking for as well. Anything else you want to highlight on that game, or do you want to hit what's going on around the Big Ten? I
don't have anything for Wisconsin. I really haven't seen them play.
No, me neither, candidly. So speaking of Wisconsin, they did beat Butler 70-64 on December 11th. That was a double overtime win for them. Iowa beat Iowa State 75-69 on the 11th as well. Kentucky beat Purdue 85-52 on the 14th. Michigan State beat Iowa 68-66 on the 15th. That was a really good win for Michigan too. Michigan State has really been on a tear. I think they're definitely somebody that we want to keep an eye on now, heading into Big Ten play, that we'll want to keep on there. Oklahoma beat Michigan 72-62 on the 17th. Ohio State beat Stanford 84-59 on the 20th. But then, as I just mentioned, Michigan State, they did lose to Alabama 82-67 on the 20th. USC over UConn, that was a big game. That was 72-70. Nice tight game. Good win for USC there on the 21st.
In stores.
What?
In stores.
That's right. That was in Connecticut, wasn't it? Not too far.
That was at UConn.
Yeah. Yeah. Georgia Tech beat Nebraska 72-61 on the 21st, and then Oregon beat Illinois on the 28th. So any of those
Oregon hasn't played Illinois. That's the only real
You're right.
That's the only real That's the only real marquee.
Yes.
That's really the only marquee game really of the first day of Big Ten play that coming up here is Oregon at Illinois.
That's right. Sorry, I was projecting that into the future. I guess I was getting my future goggles on, and I guess I don't think that's what'll happen. I think Illinois being at home will end up winning that game. But of the games that we have played, Jeff, I got to watch a little bit of the Iowa State game. I watched a little bit of that USC UConn game as well. But I haven't candidly been able to, again, like I mentioned at the beginning, we just had a lot of travel and other things going on. So I haven't watched as much yet as I'd like to of other Big Ten teams, but are any of those games that we talked about kind of stick out for you?
I think there's just kind of a mixed bag. Yeah, again, I agree with you about Michigan State. They beat Iowa, who had looked pretty good early on. But then they go and lose to an unranked Alabama team by 15. And so that's kind of a head scratcher. I think we know that USC and UCLA and Ohio State probably are the three better teams in the league. I threw that in about OSU and Stanford just because as I was making the run sheet up that it was a common opponent. Indiana beat Stanford pretty solid, but I still think Ohio State's right now on paper better than us. Doesn't mean we can't win the game, but I think on paper, I think we all would agree. I was a little thought Purdue might be improved, and then UK blew them out by 30. So the really only good opponent they've played so far. They didn't play up to what they kind of been playing beforehand. And then one that surprised me is Georgia Tech over Nebraska, again, by double digits. So that one, I did watch a little bit of the USC UConn game. I always enjoy watching Paige Beckers play. And then I did watch quite a bit of the Oklahoma-Michigan game because I thought it was going to be a men's game, or there was going to be another men's game on after, because the previous game had been North Carolina and somebody. I'd watched that game a little bit. North Carolina, Florida. I'd watched that men's game, and I thought it was going to be another men's game. It ended up being a women's game, so I stayed with it for quite a bit. And Oklahoma looked pretty decent, and Michigan, again, just where is Michigan? Are they better than most of the teams in the Big Ten, or is it just taking advantage of something? I don't know. I think right now, when you get past the first three, Kathy, kind of get your thoughts. I think you get past the first three, maybe four in the Big Ten. Anywhere from 4 to 9, 5 to 9 is pretty much a toss-up.
Yeah, I agree. I think anybody is capable of beating any of those teams, especially in the middle of the pack there, like you said, on any given night. The one question I have is maybe around Nebraska. I think they had Potts go out for the year.
Oh, yes, they did.
So I think that might be something to kind of keep an eye on as well. That might have had something to do with that Georgia Tech win over Nebraska. Maybe they're struggling now to find a new identity without Potts, and maybe that was a big blow to them as well, and they just end up kind of slipping for the year. It's lower than what we kind of think. So those are, again, injuries, especially if your teams aren't quite as deep, are hard to sustain and kind of get through. So that's one I think in particular to keep an eye on.
Yep.
All right, Jeff, let's wrap it up here and give us some final thoughts. So we just are now getting ready to really head into the heart of Big Ten play. I think that was our last non-conference game, I believe. So we're heading in at 9-3. So what are your overall thoughts as we wrap up non-conference and really start the conference play here in a couple of days?
Well, I think compared to where we were a month ago, I think people are feeling, at least I am feeling a little bit better, a lot better about this team. Did not play well. I think the Harvard game is still going to turn out to be, while we're going to feel it, I think is not going to be as big an anomaly as we thought it was at the beginning. I think Harvard has shown that they've been able to play well against teams, and I think you'll see them play well in the Ivy. And obviously it helps for us if they win the Ivy and can make the tournament with that. The Butler game, I think, is going to become the outlier. It just was an awful game. They didn't play well at all. And really, it's really in the second half, weren't really in the game after about the 6-7 minute mark of the third quarter. They really didn't play well. They got stuck. We talked a little bit about this in that post-game show that just was not a good game. But since then, we've seen this team drop only one game since then, and that was to a very good North Carolina team. They've got a couple solid wins in the net that they can build off of. But right now, I think you got to win on Saturday, because you're going to get a UCLA team coming in the next week that's going to be probably still the number one team in the country when they come into town. And as much as you'd like to think home court advantage, UCLA is going to be the number one team. So it's going to take a really good effort to get that win. But at least at this moment, Kathy, for me, team has made a lot of progress. These two games made me feel better. Again, I understand the level of the competition, but I saw some things that we had not seen for a while or early on from this team that we're used to. But I also like the fact that even right now, they're still, Indiana's at the top of the Big Ten. They're 1-0. They're not 0-1. They're not 1-1. They're at least right now 1-0. And you want to kind of maintain that. You just got to keep winning the games you're supposed to win, and then see if you can steal a couple, whether it's at home or on the road right now. But this team, I think, is going to be in pretty good shape as we get toward the middle of January, first part of February.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I looked it up earlier today as well, getting ready for the show tonight or this afternoon, and we're up to the 40th in the net rankings. And that's, we need to keep moving up that list as well. And it's something I think in conference play, we can really make some headway there. And I agree with you. I think this Wisconsin game is a winnable game. It's at home. They really should win this game. And that will hopefully launch them with some great confidence. Everyone's going to be healthy. Obviously, Lene's not coming back, but everyone else is healthy-ish. I know Sydney didn't play a whole lot, and I'm sure there are minute restrictions, and she's just going to take quite a bit of time coming from her knee injury. But we're now getting ready to start the really meat of our schedule, which is that whole gauntlet in January. And as you mentioned, UCLA is kind of kicking it off, coming into town. More than likely, like you mentioned, number one team in the country. and not just in the conference. So this is really where I think we'll find out about our team starting January. I agree with you. I feel so much better than I did maybe a month ago. I was really kind of nervous about how we were going to handle this adversity, which we hadn't seen for some time with this team. And I think they've handled it really well. We've had some players, like we mentioned, with Jules step up with Sydney being out. We see Henna coming on and giving us some really great minutes. Caroline Strickland coming in off of the bench has been fantastic. And if you continue having those three bench players come in, and we didn't even mention Lexi Vargas, by the way, who hit a 3-pointer in that Bellarmine game. We have Lexi, so we have a good 9-player rotation that I think could really pay some dividends for us here as we get into the meat of conference play. So, one more game to go left in the calendar year, but we're almost done with at least calendar 2024, and then on to the meat of it. But let's not look past Wisconsin, but take care of business. Mm-hmm. And I think that will kind of catapult us, hopefully, with some confidence going into January. All right. So up next, as we mentioned, we will be playing Wisconsin. And as I've mentioned a couple of times through our podcast, Jeff and I have a lot going on that we're juggling between both our schedules, and they're not syncing up quite right with the games. So unfortunately, we will not be doing a live post-game show on that, but we will come back 2 days later on Monday, the evening of December 30th, and we will wrap that game up for you that evening at 8 Eastern, 7 Central. So again, we won't be doing a live show, but we'll definitely be talking about that Wisconsin game on Monday. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@BackHomeNetwork. You can also be part of our private community as well. Find out more at assemblycall.substack.com. Special thanks to John Ringer of Riggs Design for designing our logos. And a big thank you to Bob Thompson for our music that you heard throughout the broadcast. But most of all, thank you all for listening. We'll be back to talk hoops with you again in 1 week from today. But until then, keep your elbow in, your eyes on the rim, and let's go Hoosiers.
All right. Good show.
Awesome. Yeah. We didn't even talk about Lexi, but her shot looks better, although her free throws are kind of falling off. But yeah, she got a 3-pointer in and a couple of 2-pointers field goals. So kudos to Lexi. Again, I think she's doing some of the things that we need her to do as well. So it's nice to see that we could have an 8 to 9 really good player rotation, because we haven't seen that for a long time. So I
just need her to keep playing it.
Yeah, I'll be excited to see if we continue to see that now that the competition is really going to ratchet up. So I think they've earned it. I think Lexi and obviously was going to be there, and Caroline obviously is going to be there, but I think Jules is as well. I think Henna is the wild card for me to see if she continues to get double-digit minutes, but I'm excited to see what we do now in conference play. I think that we're going to make some hay in there and really give some people some trouble.
Yeah, I agree. So. Hey, I'll let you enjoy the rest of your visit with your mom. When you heading home?
We will leave right after Christmas on the 26th. So we're having dinner with some friends and family tonight, and then family stuff. Then obviously tomorrow and Wednesday, and then hitting the road back home on Thursday. So that's us. So hopefully everyone has a good, safe holiday season. You don't get some gross weather or anything like that. But yeah, we're looking forward to it. It should be pretty good weather here in Southern Indiana.
Yeah, we're supposed to be in the 50s like the day after here in Northwest Indiana. So, hey, everybody, have a Merry Christmas, and we'll talk to you a week from today.
Yeah. See you guys.